What in the actual fuck did I just watch? This is hands down one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And that time is gone. I'll never get it back. God damn it. Before we get started, make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below, and tell a friend. If you're new, check out the rest of the channel, and let me know what you think. Let's dive into Venom: The Last Dance. So, full disclosure, I don't care for these movies. I thought the first one was fine. I enjoyed Hardy's dedication to the role and his goofy antics, the hilarious back and forth between Eddie and his alter ego. But outside of that, the story and the action was just so mediocre. The CGI was hit or miss, and all of that has just continued to decrease in quality with each new installment. Woody Harrelson was a delightful addition to Let There Be Carnage, but that narrative was even more nonsensical and just kind of like nothing than the first. And then there's The Last Dance. I'm not sure that this can even be classified as a complete film. My initial thoughts coming out of this were, where is the rest of this movie? It's almost as if the crew member in charge of delivering the dailies to the editing room lost some of the footage along the way, and then the editing team just snipped together whatever they could find. This is genuinely one of the worst edited movies I've ever seen in my life. There are zero smooth transitions from scene to scene. Things happen, then we jump to the next scene in a different location, and other things happen that don't necessarily connect to the things that just happened. Then we jump to a new scene where all of the concerned parties come together in some sort of convenient and illogical way, and then there's a giant boring CGI fight and the movie's over. I mean, this movie is 109 minutes. What is that? Where is the rest of it? So the villain in this one is Noel, whose face we never see for some odd reason. I'm guessing because this was probably a late addition to this production. He's voiced by Andy Serkis. He's this powerful galactic being who was imprisoned long ago by the symbiotes that he himself created. He dumps an insane amount of exposition in the opening scene as he instructs these creatures called xenophages to find Venom, as he carries something that will allow him to escape his imprisonment. So first off, why are these creatures doing his bidding? He's an imprisoned being, so how did he acquire them? What does he possess that would compel them to work for him? I'm really not sure. He obviously has some of his powers in this prison as he's opening portals. Why can't he just open a portal and dip out? It doesn't really make much sense, but honestly, none of this opening scene makes sense. I'm not sure it even makes sense to the writers, to be honest with you. Secondly, the exposition is so heavy-handed and just bad. That's another huge problem with this film that I'll get to in a second, but for now, Noel, awful villain. He just sits in a chair, or I don't even know if it's a chair, like a symbiote throne, I guess, the entire film, from what we see of him, which we never see his face. It's just an odd choice. He doesn't confront Venom at all. They set him up to be like the Sony Thanos, but we've never seen this character before. We didn't even know who he was until now, didn't know he existed. And oh yeah, nobody fucking likes this universe. Thanos was set up years in advance and teased multiple times until his debut. It's just such a bad Hail Mary attempt by this universe and Sony. So the exposition. Just about every single conversation between characters in this film is an exposition dump. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays a military general going after Venom for an unknown faceless party for God knows why, and he interacts mainly with this Area 51 scientist Teddy, played by Juno Temple, and every time they talk, they're just espousing the plot of the movie to one another, or each other's backstory. Side note, Juno Temple gets this flashback to add a backstory to her character and establish characteristics that audiences could connect with, and she could be understandable and relatable, and it's just so goddamn laughable. So basically, her and her brother as kids are running across this beach from a storm, and he's struck by lightning and dies. And he always wanted to be a NASA scientist, and so that's why she became a NASA scientist, and what leads her to bond with a symbiote. So there's that. So much in this movie and so many character choices make zero sense whatsoever. I mean, Rex goes after Venom with his soldiers trying to capture him and Eddie, and in the process of defending himself, Eddie accidentally kills a soldier. So later on, Eddie is captured and Rex gets the symbiotes, and without any due process or anything, just decides to put a bullet in Eddie's chest because he was mad about one of his guys dying. It's just so weird. Venom and Eddie's part of this story is sort of a road trip, I guess. It's called a road trip, but they're escaping San Francisco, trying to make it to New York City. God knows why. I don't really remember. And they make it as far as Las Vegas, which, isn't far at all. And then they just never make it to where they're going together. And that's pretty much their story. They're on the run from soldiers, and Noel and his creatures, whatever they're called, xenophages, I think I said before. And Noel's after him because whenever Eddie transforms into Venom in his full form, he has a codex inside of him. I don't know why Venom's the only one. Apparently it's because if a symbiote's host dies and they're reincarnated by the symbiote, they get a codex. I can't imagine in the millennia that I'm guessing Null has been alive that Venom is the first symbiote to do this. So, it's just a convenient way to make Venom like the center of this plot with Null. It doesn't make any sense. And so, most of the time Venom's just like either on top of an animal instead of Eddie, or he's just halfway out of Eddie. It's weird. It's really jarring. And then, at one point, Venom stops in Vegas, and Mrs. Chen is there. Just so happens to be there. And they dance. And Venom comes out in his full form to dance. Because, that's a time to just reveal yourself to the enemy. So, that happened. Oh, and there's this family who's trying to find Area 51, and they run into Eddie. Actually, Eddie, walking through the woods, encounters them, and the dad is just like, "Hey, come eat with us, strange man. Meet two of my young kids." Just no hesitancy whatsoever. And then that family later just walks into Area 51 with no problem. Just the easiest ever that anyone has ever walked in to Area 51 in their lives. And Eddie saves them from the xenophage attack because we just need some innocent bystanders that the audience can connect with. It's pretty dumb. In the end, a bunch of scientists get bonded with symbiotes, and they band together with Venom and fight the enemies until Venom sacrifices himself. Somehow Eddie doesn't die because Venom lays this thin door on top of him. And the movie ends. And in the post-credit scene, it's revealed that Venom survived and Null has escaped, I think. I don't really remember. But, that was it. The only redeeming quality about this movie is Hardy, and even his wild accent and unstable personality as Eddie Brock has sort of run its course at this point. I remember the common point of feedback for the original movie was that this movie's okay, but if it would have come out in the late 90s or early 2000s, it would have been a pretty good comic book movie. Because that's what it felt like. It felt akin to Spider-Man or Blade. And I guess that's fine, but the problem is that we're working in the late 2000s now, where comic book movies, most of them, have really compelling narratives and interesting characters, and they don't feel like the movie was just thrown together over a weekend. And I guess that was fine for the first movie, but Sony didn't learn from that criticism. I think they took that and thought, okay, that's good feedback, but it's not. It's a criticism. And so they produced two more movies, and ultimately, this third one, it's nothing. This movie's nothing. There's just nothing to it. There's no compelling characters, no compelling narrative. There's not really a story. It's just a jumbled mess of like, it felt like they were writing on the day for every scene. And I just don't understand how we got to this point. How can Sony afford to keep making these godforsaken films? They can't be profitable, and nobody wants these. I hope for everyone and Tom Hardy's sake that this is Venom's last dance.